Breaking news from the NBA, the Atlanta Hawks have traded Trae Young to the Washington Wizards in exchange for CJ McCollum and Corey Kispert. That's according to multiple reports. A four-time NBA All-Star, Young has been the face of the Hawks since he was drafted in 2018. He led Atlanta to 3 postseason trips, including a run to the Eastern Conference Finals in 2021. But now, Atlanta's moving in another direction, and Young gets a chance at a fresh start in D.C. So for more, I'm joined by CBS Sports NBA writer Sam Quinn. Sam, first of all, big breaking news in the association. What's your general reaction to this trade?
I think it's appropriate for both teams. I think we've been heading in this direction for a little while. The Hawks 2-8 with Trae Young on the floor this season, above 500 without him. He just wasn't really a fit for this new version of their team that they're trying to build. They're much more athletic, leaning more into Jalen Johnson as kind of the franchise player. Nickeil Alexander-Walker is a more defensive-oriented guard taking Trae Young's spot. It just seemed like they had decided we're not interested in paying max money for a guard that just doesn't defend, can't really play off of the ball, sort of a shaky shooter, especially in catch and shoot situations. Doesn't really take those. He takes those high difficulty pull-up shots. That's just not a player that they really wanted. Whereas Washington in the middle of this rebuild just looked at Trae Young and said, you know what? We need a point guard. We need somebody who can help set our young guys up for easy looks. It's a short-term investment. He only has 1 year left on his contract after this one. So I think they just said, you know what? We can get him basically for free. Why not give it a shot, see how it works?
Yeah, a guy who's once a face of the franchise is on the move, but this move does give Atlanta some financial flexibility here. So, I mean, do you see them making another move now that to help out their young core?
One way or another, I think they're going to put this money to use relatively soon. They've been linked to Anthony Davis quite a bit. Getting Trae Young off of their books was going to be essential if they were going to trade for Anthony Davis. They were in a position where if they had had both of those players, they were going to be in the tax for, 8 or 9 players next year, let alone filling out the rest of the roster. Now you can get Anthony Davis and feel a little bit better about your books. You don't have to worry about Trae Young opting in, taking that player option, and making you a very expensive team next year. If it's not Anthony Davis, they've also set themselves up to potentially have around $30 million in cap space next summer. You could use that in any number of ways. Could you chase another center? Maybe if you feel better about Kristaps Porzingis' health, you re-sign him to a longer-term deal. Do you chase a replacement guard? Could you get Kobe White in that 20-25 million range and say, we're going to get 80 to 90% of the production that Trae Young brought, but we're going to do it at half the price? This opens up a lot of roster building doors for Atlanta. As the Hawks stand right now, they don't have a player on their roster making more than 30 million next year. We're in a league where some teams have 2 guys making 50, 60. They're going to be able to build some pretty impressive depth. They're going to have a lot of options. I think this was a move they had to make to set up whatever the next era of Hawks basketball is going to be.
Right, and not entirely surprising. I mean, we've had conversations around this for, days, weeks, months, but Trae Young has made it clear that the Wizards were his preferred destination and got what he hoped for. So now that he's headed to D.C., what are your expectations for Trae with Washington?
Yeah, I think this is sort of a prove-it situation, right? He does have that player option for the offseason. Without too much league-wide interest, I think he'll pick it up. He'll make $49 million next year. And he now has 1.5 years to prove to the Wizards, hey, I can be your point guard of the future. I can fit with the guys that you already have on the team. They have a lot of young, raw athletes, guys they picked at the top of the draft, guys like Alex Sarr, Bilal Coulibaly, who have a lot of potential, but they need somebody to create shots for them. I think those young guys could really benefit from Trae's playmaking next to them. Now, the fact that they're getting him on this short-term deal and we haven't heard any news about an extension suggests to me that the Hawks are looking at this and saying, if nothing else, we're taking a flyer. We're not coming into this with the idea that we have to keep you long-term, but if you prove to us that you're the guy for our future, we'll extend you when that time comes. I don't think there was enough league-wide interest for Trae to say, oh, I'm going to be picky. I have to go to a contender. I have to go to this market. I think this was a chance for him to lock up a long-term job and prove, I can be somebody's core centerpiece ball handler moving forward. The Wizards were his best chance of getting paid.
Right, and kind of surprising to me that you say there's not a lot of league-wide interest. I mean, this is just one of 3 players in NBA history to average over 25 points and 8 assists per game in his career. So maybe we'll see the resurgence of Ice Trae in D.C., but when you look at the trade overall and what everyone got in exchange for it, how do you grade this trade, Sam?
Yeah, it's a B+ for Atlanta. I know Trae Young is an all-star, very, very talented player, But the league is moving away from this archetype, right? Guys who have to have the ball in their hands all the time, who are small, who are defensively deficient. We're seeing this around the league. Ja Morant not generating that much trade interest. LaMelo Ball when he came up as well. These kinds of point guards just aren't generating the interest that they used to. And the Hawks were trying to get ahead of this. They didn't want to risk going into next season with $50 million owed to a player that, frankly, we now know they didn't want. So I think this was smart for them. I think getting Corey Kispert is a nice little addition here. Good shooter to have on a reasonable sub-mid-level contract. You're still going to have either that $30 million or so in cap space or the flexibility to make a trade during the season. They had clearly decided that this era had run its course. To do that and to get off of the contract without having to give up draft picks, as had been reported, to get a nice role player back on a good contract, I think they did pretty well here.
They did pretty well indeed. Trae Young headed to D.C., the Atlanta Hawks rebuilding around the young core. Sam Quinn, thank you so much for the insight on this breaking news in the association. As we take a look at the trade details again, the Wizards receiving Ice Trae Young in exchange for CJ McCollum and Corey Kispert. Long-anticipated trade is underway. Coming up, we continue to discuss the breaking news in the association. All-star hooper Trae Young on the move, packing his bags and heading to D.C.